there's so many different elements in this box that I really find fascinating, and that's why I think it's definitely something worth looking into.
What's up, YouTube? Before getting into today's episode about 2020 Select Euro Soccer, I want to talk really quickly about our limited edition SlabStox Gold Embroidered T-Shirts that are coming on October 7th. On October 7th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on SlabStox.com, the T-shirt I'm wearing right now will go up for sale for 48 hours only. You will only have 48 hours to purchase the shirt. You place your order, and we'll ship you the shirt in the future date. But after those 48 hours, we will have the certain number of shirts that are produced, and we are going to put on the hem tag, which is on the bottom of the shirt that you'll see here. We're going to put on there the amount of shirts that are produced, so it'll be serial numbered like your sports cards. This is our first ever SlabStox T-shirt release, so be sure to jump in on it because we will not be making shirts again that have a SlabStox Gold logo embroidered on it. So be sure to get in now on it. They will also come with a free sticker. And our goal with this is just to help spread our brand, spread the card hobby, make others aware of the goodness of sports cards. And like always, our mission statement, we want to make sports cards more accessible to everyone. So thank you for listening to our little T-shirt entry deal that we're doing. We're going to release these on October 7th, like I said, at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, run it for 48 hours. Do not miss that. And also do not miss this episode with Matt about 2020 Select Euro Soccer. Welcome back, everyone, to another SlabStoxFC show. My name is Aaron, your host, and I am joined here today by Matt. Matt is a huge soccer fan. He does a bunch of different content creation in the soccer sports side of the world and also has been delving into the soccer card market a ton. And he's here to talk to us today about different things about how he got involved in soccer collecting and cards in general, and then also the 2020 Select Euro set, which just came out. And we've got a lot to talk about in terms of that set. So, Matt, thanks for joining us. Tell me about yourself. Tell our audience about what you do in your collecting journey.
Sure. Well, first off, thanks for having me on, Aaron. I appreciate it. I know SlabStoxFC is still fairly new, but I can see the growth already. So it's really an honor to be one of the first few guests coming on. But as far as my background is concerned, I really graduated with a business management degree, but soccer, football, whatever the audience is here, whichever they prefer. I started delving into covering the game a lot more extensively, covering games live, whether it be locally or on the road during the ICC tournaments, where like a lot of the bigger clubs come abroad and they play in the summer to kind of get that seasoning. So I've been in the space as far as content is concerned and creating podcasting, all those sorts of things. But recently, and I'm sure many of the other people who will be listening to this kind of got back into it or started with card collecting and soccer specifically during the whole pandemic, right? You're sitting at home, you're looking at what you can probably invest in, just kind of keep busy, if you will. And that's kind of where I got back in. Previously, when I was younger, I collected Pokemon cards. I collected a ton of basketball, baseball, American football. Those were like my focus ones. But since I've been so immersed in football, soccer, the culture itself, and just the game in general, that was, well, let me see if I can apply a lot of these sorts of principles and knowledge that I have to see if I can kind of have a leg up or get the edge, if you will, on the rest of the market. And that's kind of where I've been focusing the past, I would say, 6 months.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, 6 months, it's for people who have been in the hobby for a while. 6 months doesn't sound very long, but then if you think about, if you spend 6 months researching one thing and trying to learn everything about it, you can make so much ground in 6 months, which is why if people come to me, they're like, hey, I don't know much, should I jump in? I'm always like, yeah, man, you can learn so much in such a short amount of time, especially with how much content and information is at your fingertips today, which is awesome. So thank you. I'm glad that we got that out of the way. So in terms of cards that you're collecting yourself, what sets have you been looking at? What different players have you been looking at in soccer specifically? And then also if you've been doing some basketball too, just so, because people who watch SlabStoxFC aren't always just soccer people. There's a lot of people are trying to get into it. So it's always good to know that there are more people just like them.
Yeah, so the sets that I've been focusing on predominantly have been, the big ones, the Prism ones, the World Cup 2014, 2018, the Euro set, which I know the Euro 2016 specifically is a very interesting one because, there's a lot of firsts in there and probably onlys in there. Ibrahimovic is a huge one specifically. As a Milan fan, as someone who's followed him in his career for many years, that's essentially the only Prism opportunity you're going to get at a guy like Ibrahimovic, who, if it's not for Ronaldo, Messi, maybe Ibrahimovic has a Ballon d'Or, which for those who are unfamiliar with it, it's pretty much the globe's best football player, soccer player. So his legacy, his mantra, his like lion-like mentality that he embraces, he has everything that you want. He has the CV, he has the resume, he has the awards, the goals all over the world, and he has that global popularity too, which we always talk about, right? It's one thing to have the ability, but it's another to have the extra things kind of help elevate you within the market, right? Because we all know the popular players, right? And the players that are very good. And it's like, why isn't this guy's cards going for more? He's amazing. But it's really just more having that sort of grasp on what other elements drive interest, drive the market, and ultimately drive people to want to invest in them individually. So Ibrahimovic is one. Mohamed Salah, his first 2018 World Cup prism there. That's a big one. I don't know if Egypt gets into another World Cup, so we'll have to wait and see with them. But I try to focus on a lot of those players that aren't Ronaldo, Messi, because I think by now, and even Sancho, Mbappe, who've frankly have already been known in the market for such a long time, that if you're able to kind of have that grasp and that overall knowledge on those next wave of players coming up that are maybe making big transfers, and they're going to be eventually going from a stepping stone club to eventually maybe going to a top club like a Real Madrid, a Barcelona, a Manchester United, a Chelsea, so on and so forth, like we've seen with Kai Havertz, for instance, and potentially Sancho if United can get the deal done. So those are some of the sets I've been focusing on. Even Optic, I know the Optic ones, some people are kind of mixed on, but I always just like the kind of look of them. It's very clear. Obviously, you have to kind of keep an eye on, the centering and all those sorts of things that you've been educating people on. But those have been pretty much the sets I've been focusing on is the World Cup Prism, the Euro Prism, and obviously which leads us into the next upcoming Prism, which is, next upcoming Euro set, which is the Select.
Yeah, which is interesting because, when we knew that 2016 Prism Euro was a thing, I was like, oh, 2020 Prism Euro, it's going to be Prism, and it's not. It's Select, which I from a basketball fandom side of things with basketball cards, obviously I'm a huge basketball card fan. Select is one of my favorite sets every single year. I think that it looks spectacular. They do a really good job incorporating new parallels mixed with designs, different tiered sets. So I was really excited when 2020 Euro actually ended up being Select, because there's always room for Prism sets. Those are always going to be popular, but they haven't had a Select in soccer since 2017 when Mbappe had his field level card. So we haven't seen Select for a while.
Yeah.
Yep. And now we do have this 2020 Select Euro, but we don't have a Euro Cup in 2020. So it's kind of like a precursor to the 2021 Euro Cup. Well, that's supposed to be 2020. And what are your thoughts on this product as a whole? Remove the price tag, remove the checklist, just as a whole, like Select Euro. Does it do it for you?
It does. I mean, I was reviewing the entire set list, and I think what you start kind of going through in your mind in terms of from an investment standpoint, if you're going that route, or if you're going to one of those guys that breaks the bar and just wants to have that sort of enjoyment, it's got the big nations, right? You always look at if a big nation for some reason doesn't qualify. For instance, say Portugal's in this, obviously Poland's in this, Italy, England, France, like the big nations are in this. So you're not going to have that sort of like, there's no Ronaldo in here. There's no desire. And it's a Euro set, so there's automatically going to be no Messi. So you kind of start going down the list of the nations, and then you start going down the list of the players that are going to be in there. And getting back to Ronaldo for a little bit, I invested in his 2016 Euro card, which was I just grabbed a couple base cards, no problem, at very low cost. And I've been just holding them. And obviously, the Ronaldo market is booming. So I grabbed a couple of those, sat on those. Even Eden Hazard's another one too. But this, I looked with Ronaldo specifically, and you start going down the line of like firsts, right? Or even last for him, right? Because he's 35, 36. Is this his last Euro? Portugal win. They have a fantastic team. They won in 2016. So you start kind of throwing those elements in there, and it obviously is going to make it that much more desirable. But, we're not going to focus too much on the Ronaldos and we want to know where the other guys are, right? Ultimately, that's going to stretch out that value and make it something that is worth your while. And for me, as someone who's Polish and Italian, Sicilian, living in America, Robert Lewandowski, his cards were booming ahead of the Champions League final, and as they made that journey, right, he had a fantastic year. They won the treble, Bayern Munich, and despite having some sort of difficulties at the international level with Poland, because they're really not at that level as like a Germany and Italy and the like, he's a huge player, and I consider him right in that tier below. So for someone like him, I mean, this is a great market. And then Sancho, his first Euro card. Mbappe, his first Euro card. And those two teams have so much promise and potential behind them heading into this tournament that they're must buys. And I think for me, if I'm looking at this box, it's only the 20 teams that have qualified so far, and Panini's made that, obvious to everybody. So in the buildup, you're going to have transfers that maybe drive prices. You're going to have other players that come into the mix that maybe drive prices as well. So there's so many different elements in this box that I really find fascinating. And that's why I think it's definitely something worth looking into. Even if you're, someone who's so pro Messi or pro one player, there's a lot of value. There's a lot of top tier players in this set.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is when we're talking about this, it makes me think this is kind of Panini's, they're putting a foot forward to get more soccer out there for people. Because if you think about it, they have a whole nother year until the actual Euro 2020 happens. Who's to say they don't roll out a Prism Euro set once they have all the qualified teams and once they actually get more people in there? Because I know a lot of people had reservations based on, oh, no Holland in the checklist, no Ansu Fati. And, some of those younger guys were left out, but maybe in the future we see a Prism Euro set come out, and then they also have Select and Prism, just like basketball. So you can start to draw comparisons between cards. And I think always, as investors and data analyzers, it's better to have more sets out there with more comparisons than just one set, to where that's what everyone buys. It's only a set, you can't get anything else. I think being able to debate cards versus each other, like if Sancho has a Select Euro card and a Prism Euro card, that'd be a wonderful debate in the future. The Select came first, Prism's a bigger brand, Select's probably produce less. Which one do you go with? I think that's awesome. But kicking it back, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, real quick. I think what's also a fascinating dynamic to talk about, or element of this whole conversation as far as soccer goes, which is so unique to the other sports that you do a great job of covering, is the stickers. And I know you had Tyler on a couple episodes ago. I think that's a really fascinating one to follow too, because if you're looking at this set, right, and you're like, to your point, there's no Fati in here. He's already just got called up to being in the Barcelona's first team. Well, what if he's a sticker option, right? There's going to be those sorts of additions where people, this is essentially at this time in the European market, this is essentially the hottest time for the card market in recent memory, but this is also the first time where you could maybe see a bit of an overlap as far as sticker collectors who were devout diehard when they're getting their albums together, tapping into the actual card market itself. So I'm really curious to see how the cards are driven in those other countries where they are available.
Yep, and I think that the Select set is one of the first Panini sets that's really going to be put on center stage for the European market. Because I know I was talking last week to Chris, he was talking about how they actually are getting allocation of Select Euro in Germany and in the UK, which is huge for people on Europe. And then thinking about the price tag of this and what Panini is releasing this at and setting the market for, it is $600 a hobby box, which is quite a bit. This is soccer's a really new thing, I'd say, in the market as like a hot product. To come out here and drop out a box for $600 a box is quite expensive, because if you go 6-8 months back, you could get Prism basketball boxes for $600 a year ago today. So thinking about that, and I don't know if it's going to work. I know that they didn't sell out right away. What are your thoughts on the price tag of the box? Was it something that Panini could have done to better position this product, or was it just too high?
For me, I think I actually looked at the price and I thought it was a little steep, be honest with you, just given the actual market itself, given the actual times, and the actual just kind of oddity of the Euro itself, right? Everyone looks at it was supposed to be this year, and now people are going to be looking at it like, I'm going to pay top dollar for a set that may or may not have the complete, amount of teams or the complete amount of players. So there's going to be probably a little bit of pushback, and maybe that's one of the reasons why people are so kind of hesitant to pay top dollar. As you mentioned, if let's say they do come out with a Prism set to kind of rival that, right, and to kind of maybe see how those two kind of go head to head in the build up to the tournament. But in any case, it's always monitoring, right? If this box is at 600 and Sancho's booming and Fati's booming and some of these other guys are booming to maybe elevate the product to another level, then it's obviously, we maybe look back and say, well, $600 for a set that has Sancho's first Euro card in it or Mbappe's first Euro card. Well, people will be like, I'll pay a little bit extra and premium for that. So it's going to be hard to say. And at the end of the day, we're talking a year down the road, right? I think I'm posting something on your account and pretty much saying, what's the price? What do you think you're going to invest in this? Do all these sorts of things. And I looked at it and I'm like, if you're going to buy the box, I think it's best to just hold it, stash it in the build up to the tournament and around the buzz. I think right now everyone's so fixated and focused on the Champions League coming back, the domestic leagues coming back, that international play seems like somewhat a second nature or second, fiddle, if you will, although there is the UEFA Nations League, which that's another whole nother element. So I think overall, if I'm telling someone about this product and just soccer cards in general, because you mentioned, you have a lot of people in your audience who are basketball, baseball, and all these sorts of sports, is to just understand that soccer itself is a whole different animal as far as the competitions, as far as the players moving around, and as far as just the amount of different tournaments that you have available to you.
Yeah, and I like that, because I think the more that people start to understand soccer, grasp the different leagues, grasp the different events, there's so many big events versus you got your Super Bowl once a year, which is big, but also only 2 teams are in it at the end, versus obviously with the World Cup, yes, it comes down to 2 teams, but there's such a big culmination of, you got all the group stages and then the bracket play and all that stuff, that I think there's so many big events in soccer between the Euro and the World Cup that happen every 2 years. We're lucky enough now to actually, Copa America. And now we have the Euro sandwiched back to back with the World Cup, which is really going to put a bunch of pent up demand, I think, on soccer over the next 2 years. So I think it's going to be a wild ride for people in the soccer card market for the next 2 years, for sure, a year to 2. And I was just wanting to bring it back to talking about the box prices, because you're talking about Sancho's first select Euro card, or Euro card in general. And I was just checking eBay before we get on this, and the last base, like terrace level they call it, which if you're a basketball fan, it's concourse in the basketball set. It sold for $50 for the base card. And this is it's funny because I want to say it's, a third year now almost Sancho card, because he had the 2018 Topps Chrome and the Optic. He had the 2019 Topps Chrome Bundesliga, which was released a little later, obviously got delayed. And now the 2020 Select Euro. It's really hard to try to line these things up versus basketball. It's very easy, but $50 for a Sancho base card. Everything with the box prices really just depends on how are the singles doing that release from it. So if we see singles hold up, like the Sancho, I'm not saying it's going to be a $50 card in a month. Probably won't be, because as we know, first singles that hit eBay sell way higher than what comes out after that, because there's going to be more supply. But, if these singles hold up and the hype builds for Euro going into next year, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. And as the card market changes and the box prices in basketball start to reflect in soccer, that this can hold up at $600 because of the brand name. And I just bring it back to thinking about how many people are going to learn about soccer or learn from basketball to soccer, or people get involved in basketball, then understand that Select's a massive brand in basketball, and then love the brand in soccer. And I think that is kind of a miss by Panini not releasing a select set for the last couple of years, because it's kind of like, oh, it was big in 2015 and 2017 and 2016, and that just kind of went away, and now it's back with a Euro. So it's a little confusing, but I think that it could pay dividends over the next year, especially with the Euro coming up, like you were speaking about, to have this set out there. And I think it just all has to do with the Prism set, honestly. Is there a Prism set or not?
Yeah, well, I also think another interesting thing I'm kind of noticing with the market itself is there's a lot more. It's becoming slowly integrating itself within the mainstream of, whether it be the players, whether it be, certain individuals getting involved with it. And I noticed something yesterday. I got an email from Topps, and I'm not sure if you caught this, but we posted it on our Jersey Sports Card account. There's a Topps curated set with Cristiano Ronaldo, and it's sold out already. So you're not getting any. The Borussia Dortmund one, I stocked up on a couple of those because of Haaland, Gio Reyna, who we didn't mention, of course, yet. But to have Ronaldo kind of sign on to do that and get like a curated set and it already sells out, there's got to be something in it. And soon enough, it's eventually going to be a boom where you're going to get more of those sets. You're going to get more teams that possibly co-sign, maybe get Real Madrid or Manchester United, are really going to drive this, because Borussia Dortmund are a good club, don't get wrong, and they're very large. But globally speaking, you ask any casual fan of the game, or even if they're not in that casual, they know Ronaldo, Messi, they know the key players, they know Real Madrid at least, they know Barcelona. So you get something like that where you get a Fati type player that's integrated in there. And one of the things, I just kind of rambling here, but just hear me out. There's a U.S. men's national team potential coming up he's in Barcelona system. His name is Conrad de la Fuente. He's like an 18, 19-year-old kid. He's in the Barcelona youth system. So, you know what I'm saying? You kind of throw all these sorts of elements in there where if you're able to get, on top of the game and know who the prospects are coming up that are also U.S. related, you have the leg up on the market. So I'm curious to see if we're seeing more of those team and player specific sets coming in the pipeline.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to compare the Dortmund set that came out, man, that had to have been 5-6 months ago, maybe,
Yeah,
like way back
money
earlier in
pump.
the year. And that was cool. So it's a cool set, but it took a good 4 months to sell out. It took a long
Yeah.
time. The boxes were sitting there and they were $20 a box. And now the Ronaldo one, like you said, sells out right away. I'm curious to see as hype builds in America for soccer leading up to, the World Cup, like you said, America's got a huge push behind it. What does Topps do to build out a really awesome American set? And then that thing flies. And then we just start to see this overall, buying and selling and mentality around these things. Cause now I know those Dortmund box sets are going for $45 on eBay, which, that's a pretty safe double your money flip from 6 months ago. So I think there's many opportunities like you're talking about for Topps and Panini to just like get more creative in the soccer market. They've done it for the other sports, but they didn't know if the potential was there for soccer to do it. Now they do. They're pursuing it, and like we saw, Ronaldo sells out. So very, very cool there. Last thing I want to cover here is give the audience some advice on you don't know what to do with soccer. It's a thing. We're talking about it here. How do you start? What's some advice you can give them to get into and really start to learn it and understand it and process it for the next 2 years? Because I just want to reiterate one more point is that I always have looked at soccer as it's a 1 to 2 year game now. It's not a 1 to 2 month game. It's not, let me stock up on all these cards in 1 to 2 months. I'm going to make 50 to 100% ROI. You got to be able to forecast it for a year to two out for these big events. So let's hear it.
Sure. So I think once I mentioned off the top, it's grasping how the player movement works, how the competitions are structured in soccer is so huge, right? I think everyone that has probably listened to this, or most people that listen to and follow you, know of the American sports format, right? The whole long season, the playoffs, and then eventually a winner's crowned, right? So people are looking at it, what does aggregate mean? How is this format in a Champions League or main tournament like this? So the first thing I would recommend is to kind of have a grasp and knowledge of the game itself, player movement, how the main tournaments where there is sets and how that sort of kind of revolves around that, how those tournaments go. And then obviously just have more of a grasp on the next wave of players, right? Because eventually there are going to be players that everyone kind of knows, and to get a deal, it's going to be much more difficult. But if you're someone who maybe recognized Erling Haaland, for instance, when he was at Salzburg, when he was, lighting it up in the group stage before he made the move to Borussia Dortmund, you were like, hey, I got quite a bit of cash rolling with me right here just by simply having that edge on people. So for me, who is predominantly on Twitter, there's a wealth of knowledge on those sorts of younger players. And that's maybe something that is a little bit more foreign to the American audience, American sports follower, is you see these kids and they're starting at 16, 17. You're thinking Gio Reyna is only a 17-year-old kid, and I can get his card and it's worth 500 to 1,000 and somewhere in that realm. So having that sort of a grasp on where players, how quickly they can integrate through the system, get into the mainstream and the limelight, and ultimately help push their value when they do play, is where I would probably start spending any sort of money. Because as you mentioned in your previous episode, I think one of your videos on Instagram, is that you have to kind of take a little bit of failure. You have to learn from your mistakes, and when you're buying players or buying sets that you otherwise don't see that much value in.
Yeah, and really quick, if you can, for me, what's a way? So I love that because I think it's super important. What's a way for someone? Is there a Twitter account for them to follow? Is there a website that they can learn this stuff from? Because they can just Google maybe aggregate group play, whatever, try to learn it. But is there somewhere that you think is great for people to start to learn those soccer terms and what they mean for the tournaments?
I think, it could be something as simple as, Google UEFA Champions League format. How do teams qualify to these rounds? How does the group stage phase work? How does the knockout phases work? That would be a very simple way to start if you're someone who's not really kind of acclimated and in the know in terms of how this game rolls. But, I always look to, when I'm talking about just the younger players in general, is there's a lot of data, there's a lot of analysis on Twitter that it's free, that you can find out about the next young talents coming up. So one of the ones I usually go with real quickly is Scouted Football. They cover predominantly under 23 players, and they already covered years ago Haaland. They already covered years ago Sancho, and predicted and forecasted these sorts of rises. So those are the accounts you want to kind of focus on, more so than the rumor mills and the sources of whether or not there's a player going to be moving, is to just have a grasp on those next wave of players. but also to not kind of have that overall, stronghold on how the game works in comparison to, the main four in the US market.
That's awesome, Matt. Thank you. I think that's going to help a ton of people understand that, because something I've seen is that if you understand the players that are not known yet by the overall market, you will for sure have a leg up on the competition, like Matt said earlier. Matt, any last words for anyone listening to this?
Sure. Enjoy the hobby, enjoy soccer if you guys do get into it. If you guys have, I guess it's my chance to plug, maybe, I don't know. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Matt_Santangelo. I tweet a ton about the game, so you can get that knowledge there. I write a ton about it. I podcast about it at State of Play Pod. And it was an honor to be on this podcast. Of course, you can see I'm a Milan fan here, wherever it is. So keep an eye out for the main tournaments coming up. It's great to have the sport back, and I look forward to talking with you soon, Aaron.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Thank you, everyone, for watching this episode of SlabStoxFC. Be sure to go follow Matt on Twitter, and we will catch you guys next time.